there, welcome to my kitchen. I'm Betsy. So today when I thought about what we wanted to make, it's solely based on the season. It is fall, and when I think of fall, I think of pumpkin. So we are going to make pumpkin bread, pumpkin muffins. It's all the same batter. You can make it however you want it. I originally got this recipe from a cookbook from my hometown in Iowa, and the thing that drew me to this recipe was in the directions it said to bake it in a coffee can, which I don't even think you can buy a metal coffee can anymore, but apparently back in the day of our grandparents, they didn't have baking pans, so they used whatever they had. So this recipe originally told you to bake it in a coffee can. We're not going to do that, but the recipe is just phenomenal. And I have found a lot of cookbooks that I love are your 4-H, your junior league, your church cookbooks, because those recipes have been tried so many times and they are so good. So this is where this one comes from. This one is pretty simple. We're going to start by adding 3 cups of sugar, and then we're going to add canola oil. You can use any oil you want. I like canola oil. 1 cup of that. Add that in. And then we're going to add 2 cups of pumpkin. Now, be careful. Don't buy the pumpkin pie. There's a can called pumpkin pie mix. Don't get that one. That one has all the spices already in it. We want to add our own. So we're going to add 2 cups of pumpkin. I read an article once talking about all the nutrients in pumpkin, so I firmly believe this is health food. So, 2 cups of pumpkin, we're going to add that in. And we're just going to get that on the mixer, enough to get it blended together. That won't take but a second to blend, and then we're going to add 4 eggs. We're going to go ahead and add our spices, because that's really what makes this taste so good, is all the great spices that go with pumpkin. So we're going to start with a teaspoon of ground cloves. And the one thing I'll tell you about spices, you just don't want them to expire. And I don't know about you, but I'm not going to use that much ground cloves in a year. So I'm guessing that a lot of your spices are old in your cabinet. It's become a rule in my house now. Every Thanksgiving, they go. I start every Thanksgiving with a brand new batch of spices. One teaspoon of ground ginger, a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, a teaspoon of allspice, and finally a teaspoon of cinnamon. Those are kind of the tried and true spices that go with pumpkin. And they all kind of scream fall. Okay, once we have those in there, we do also need to add some leavening agents. So we're going to add a ½ teaspoon of baking powder and 2 teaspoons of baking soda. The last thing we're going to add is 2 teaspoons of salt. Okay, now that we've got all our spices in there, I don't actually need to get that on the mixer. I just want to get those blended in a little bit. And then I'm going to add the flour, 3½ cups of flour. Once I get this done, I'm just going to mix it on the mixer, and we actually are done. That's how simple this is. Get that on, and now I'm just looking to get all that flour incorporated in. Oh, and I made a mess. Wouldn't be my kitchen if I didn't make a mess. Okay, the one thing you do need to make sure of is scraping the bottom. You don't want to get this all done and realize you've got a big dry patch or a wet patch on the bottom. So just scrape down the sides, get to the bottom, and then let it do some more mixing. So once we have that all blended, we're pretty much done. Now it's the big decision, whether you're making muffins or whether you're making bread. The only difference, it's the same batter, we're done, is whether you're going to put them in the muffin pan or break it off as a bread. I tend to do both and stick them in the freezer. If you're making a bread, you're going to make sure you spray the pan really well, so you need to make sure and get that out in one piece. Again, I use canola oil spray just because I like it. If you're using the muffin pan, just use muffin cups. For the muffins, I just scoop some in there. If I'm doing a bread, I'm going to try to fill the pan about 2/3 full. The more you put in there, the longer it takes to bake. So 2/3 is going to make a really tall bread, but that's how I like it. So I will also tell you, because my kids were incredibly picky eaters when they were growing up, I never put pecans in the dough because at that point they didn't like it. So whenever I make pecan muffins or pecan bread now, I just put them on top, because that way whoever's eating it can make the decision whether they want to pick them off or whether they want to eat them. So for the bread, I would put this in the oven for at least 45 minutes. Now the thickness of the bread is going to determine how long it takes. 350 degrees for about 45 minutes. I'm going to stick a toothpick in there, pull it out. If it's still wet, I'm going to add a little bit more time. For the muffins, I would start at 15 minutes. Same thing, I would still insert a toothpick to see, but about 15 minutes should be okay for those. And there is nothing better than these muffins and breads in the fall when you wake up in the morning or as an afternoon snack. My kids love them, I love them, and they just scream fall. So this is our finished product. I've got both the bread and the muffins. I wish you could smell this because this is so aromatic and just smells of fall. These taste so good. I hope you give these a try, and I hope you enjoy these as much as we do.